What is up, guys? I could not resist. I had to do a review on the latest chapter of Toriko that was released today. This is ridiculous. This chapter will warrant such a good video from me. First off, I have to say it was quite an awesome chapter. Very solid, very innovative, very genius. Like, the way they set it up, where Ichirayu's full course had to be like set up properly so that like this part of the full course had to eat the other part and then evolve, and then that evolved form had to be eaten by something else. That was genius. It reminded me of some sort of like Pokemon-esque video game where you had to like do things in a certain order in order to breed like a certain Pokemon. It's not just Pokemon. It reminds me of other games, Game Boy Advance games. I can't remember exactly what they were, but you get the idea. More so than that, I have to address the main issue. At the beginning of this video, and I talked about this in the last chapter, I was just boggled out of my mind. I just thought it was so irrational, so unintelligible for these people to rush off with the treasure chest without scoping out the rest of the place. They didn't even bother to check that house and that, you know, withered old human or old creature that was living inside. And I think that was a plot hole, because for someone who is as intellectual, well, that's a bad way of putting it, for someone who has survived so long in the gourmet world and trained in the gourmet world, who has learned to be intelligent and check his entire surroundings before proceeding, for him not to even linger behind and check out like what was, you know, around the area, that just didn't make sense. Like, that would have been like one of the first things I would have done. You see, like, you enter this like safe zone, right? And it's not just a treasure chest on the floor. There's like branches, there's like unknown little shrubbery areas, there's this strange house with someone inside. You're not gonna check that out. That's what you do in a video game. You check out everything, make sure everything's cleared, make sure there's not like some extra reward if you go up the house. So I thought that was really stupid. And judging from the last chapter, Toriko sniffed out this person, so he either knew what this creature was, or he just sniffed it out and said, it's just some creature, I don't know what it is. I mentioned in the last chapter he did that like sniff history thing to figure out like what all the creatures were before finding where Ichirayu was, and he sort of traced that back to the safe zone. But the problem was, right before Ichirayu was the creature that is now in the hotel, well, not hotel, the house, and most likely is either dead or dying from old age. From this chapter, it seems like this guy was possibly the billion bird, the old aged extinct billion bird who had no reason to lay any more eggs, and probably was too old and waited too long sitting in his tent just waiting for things to happen. I mean, it's honestly kind of sad. I doubt the author has reached this far when he drew this up, but it's like Ichirayu sort of gathered all these ingredients. Maybe he knew it was coming, so he knew the billion bird who's guarding his egg had, you know, a use in the future. But it was kind of scary to think that maybe there was a chance that like the billion bird, he would have just been, you know, held captive there for all eternity. But at the same time, I doubt Ichirayu was that sort of person. Most likely they were friends, and he probably asked the bird to stay there because the bird, you know, it didn't mind. It didn't mind. Nothing was attacking it anymore, and so it was just going along its way. It's kind of sickening how some of the Ichirayu's full course ingredients have to eat each other and then evolve and then eat each other in order to finally get through to the evolved, matured form of the billion bird. However, at the same time, it was like kind of, I mean, I was just very impressed how they sort of all figured all that out. But at the same time, like, it's Toriko. The author sort of makes it up as he's going. So not really credit to the characters for figuring it out. It's really to the author for making it happen. Again, the author also made it so that Toriko forgot to look in the house, as with the rest of them, and then we see like this shadowed figure with crippled old hands. Like, we honestly don't know what's going on. At the same time, I'm very curious to see what Setsuno and Jiro's been doing all this time. We haven't seen him since. Most likely, I feel like maybe they've gone back into the gourmet world and they're trying to, gather ingredients too, or train, or something else. But here's a plot twister. Remember how Jiro, when he enters the gourmet world, he becomes young again? Maybe it's the same thing with Setsuno. Hey, and maybe they're both in their young forms, battling it out, training or gathering ingredients, most likely in the gourmet world right now. Setsuno really may, like, if this is true, it sort of will remind me of spoiler alert, that character in Yu Yu Hakusho, that old girl who she turns young every time she fires her energy handgun, because the aura released rejuvenates her temporarily. But just to sum it all up, it was a fairly solid episode. I'm excited to see what happens in the next one. You guys all know that I like Toriko, but at the only thing at the end was that the end was kind of creepy. That scaring that billion bird, and for it to release hundreds of eggs that hatch immediately, that was kind of screwed up. And evolutionarily, it doesn't really make that much sense, but based on what was explained on how it needs to sort of make untasty eggs to survive. But I'm just getting too deep into it. My final comment is probably the fact that it's kind of disturbing that they will have to eat these live birds. Like, they're obviously not going to be live, but it's kind of sad that they're going to have to kill these birds, these hundreds of birds, cook them, feather them, and then serve them to the millions of humans alive. Like, honestly, the manga is not intended to get to such a mature macro scale with all that philosophy and moralistic issues, but it's disturbing to me. I mean, this chapter was intended to be something where Komatsu and everyone else were the good guys. They're these good guys who are trying to save the humans from starving, by doing this, by salvaging this. And Komatsu, he's always this somewhat naive but very pure character who's trying to make a difference for the greater good. And yet, in this chapter, at the end of the day, they're killing hundreds of creatures to keep other creatures alive. Like, what right do you have to say that the billion bird is not as valuable as a human life? So, I mean, Komatsu, obviously, the author probably hasn't thought that far, but like, that's kind of disturbing. Like, seeing Komatsu cheering at the end of this, yay! We just hatched thousands of birds. Now we just gotta kill them all, slaughter them, feather them, boil them so the feathers come off, cook them, and then send them off so that our humans can survive. I mean, at the end of the day, like, technically, as a biologist, for species, like, technically, it would be more logical to let the humans who can't survive die off, so that a smaller population can sort of get by. Like, there's no real need to maintain that status quo of tens of millions of humans surviving to that extent. Sure, starvation is a bad thing and there's a lot of suffering going on, but like, honestly, at least from what I see through Toriko's universe, these humans are very cruel creatures that are very ignorant and naive and stupid, and they never like give thanks to Toriko or Komatsu for saving them. Some of them do, the children do, but the adults usually don't. And on top of that, like, it seems like they're just going to keep growing and growing, almost like a virus or some sort of parasitic swarm. that just keeps growing and growing if you keep feeding it. So that may lead to overpopulation. Probably not, because they'll never be stronger than the gourmet world beast. But at the same time, it's like some of these humans are pretty cool creatures. Like, they will exploit other creatures if they want to. So it's just something to think about. I can't really conclude a right or wrong answer from this. But as always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe for more videos.